Hello and welcome to Smaulgld's Russian Central Bank Gold Editions for the month of March 2018. Russia announced the other day that it had slowed its gold editions pace in March, adding just 300,000 ounces of gold, or 9.33 tons, to reserves. Russian gold reserves now rise to 1,891 tons and remain the fifth largest in the world. To recap, in 2017, Russia added 227 tons of gold to reserves, and since June 2015, the Central Bank of Russia has added over 609 tons of gold to reserves. Overall, Russian reserves reached 457.995 billion in March, up from 453.644 billion in February. Russian treasury holdings were below 100 billion again in February. The gold that Russia has, the 1,891 tons, yes, they are worth 80.482 billion, and they constitute about 18% or 17.57% of overall Russian foreign reserves. Let's take a look at some of the charts we've prepared for you. So in 2017, we mentioned Russia added about 224 tons of gold. The year before that, Russia added about 199 tons, and then in 2015 Russia added 208 tons. So generally averaging well over 200 tons for the last 3 years, probably on pace to do another 200 tons this year. This chart shows the 609 tons added from 1281 in June up to 1891 in March 2018. And here's a longer-term chart that shows the additions. These are the three numbers I was talking about. 224 tons last year, 199 tons the year before, 208 tons. You can see that they really picked up the pace right after the financial crisis right here. At one point, Russia had been a net seller of gold. Now, Russia has been, for decades, one of the world's leading gold producers, and they had been exporting the bulk of their gold. Recently, they've been adding most of that domestic production to their own reserves. If you're interested in adding gold to your own reserves, you can do so through the links on the Smaulgld site, Golden Eagle Coins, SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange. If you do buy, Smaulgld gets a small commission, so it's a way of helping out the site. And the links are below this BitChute and YouTube as well, so please check it out. Now, here's a chart showing the monthly gold purchases. This one I did rather in tons. I did it in ounces, and you can see there's a few months over the past few years excuse me, where Russia would add well over 1 million ounces to reserves. This 300,000 is one of the lower gold additions in some time, but you could see they're pretty consistent. If they have a bad month, or not a bad month, but a low month, they tend to pop back, and they've been averaging a decent amount of, a world-leading amount of gold to reserves for the past few years, well outpacing China. I used to keep this chart. I still put it up. But the People's Bank of China has stopped reporting or adding gold to reserves since October 2016. But even when they were reporting, after they had stopped reporting for a long time, they were still shy of the pace of Russian gold acquisitions. You can see that. Russia in the red, China in the blue. As I mentioned, Russia has increasingly been buying up more of their domestic gold mining production, which is either second or third in the world behind China, and China's first, and then either Australia is second or Russia is second, depending on whose chart you look at. But here you see the red shows the gold that the Central Bank or the Federation of Russia added, and the blue shows how much the country produced, and you could see in the last few years, that red line is upwards to 65-75% of overall production. Now, the remainder of that gold had been going for the past few years to China. They made an announcement earlier this year that some of that was also going to go to India. And I remember India has no gold domestic production. Excuse me. So they have to import their bulk of their gold, or all of their gold, other than the gold they can recycle. So Russia will be helping them with some of their demand this year and next year. Now, where does that put Russia? Remember, this chart here is gold reserves by country. When I say country, I mean by central bank, not necessarily by country. The country of India, the people in India are deemed to have, or people think they have, estimate to have 18,000 to 22,000 tons of gold. And it's also projected or estimated that Chinese have about 20 to 30,000 tons of gold in the country. This chart represents what the central banks themselves report. A lot of people say they're lying. I don't really think they're lying. I think they just don't have it on their central bank balance sheet. Like India is not even in the top 10. The Indian central bank is 557 tons. Just that the people and the temples have the gold. Now China has 1,842 tons of gold. And again, that's the People's Bank of China. We know there's more gold in China. We know that there's government-owned entities, banks, investment funds that have gold. All belongs to China, but it's just not on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. Now, Russia, the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia, has passed the People's Bank of China. You can see here with 1,891 tons. They won't go into fifth place or fourth place with France. They won't match them this year, even if they add 200 tons. But in a couple of years, you can see them really moving up past France and Italy, because most of the countries on this chart, United States, Germany, Italy, France, Switzerland, Japan, and Netherlands, have not added gold to reserves in quite some time. Turkey has moved into the top 10 because they've been active the last 16 months. Prior to that, Turkey was a net gold seller, but Turkey has now lifted itself into the top 10 and probably will continue. And I would expect Turkey might pass the Netherlands this year. Switzerland used to be in the top 5, sold 60% of her gold in 2000, just prior to joining the IMF. But Russia, it appears to be on a solid pace of adding 200 tons of gold, or the Central Bank of Russia, each and every year. Overall reserves, this is interesting. Since January 2016, over the last 2 years, Russia has solidified her foreign reserve position with a goal, I think, of getting to 500 million in reserves. And that's pretty interesting given the sanctions. They managed to still add to reserves during a time when you think they might be spending reserves because of the financial difficulty. Russian holdings of U.S. Treasuries, they have been pretty much flat. They're up year over year slightly, but this idea that Russia is full-scale dumping treasuries is not true. They have about 20% of the reserves in treasuries. They probably hold some dollars as well. But again, this is not a large amount of treasuries, but it's 93 billion. It's, you know, what, a few months of QE when they were doing it. So Russia, not a big holder of U.S. treasuries, but also not a big seller either. And that about does it for today. So thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this report, please consider donating to Smaulgld. Also, please subscribe to the Smaulgld channel on BitChute and YouTube, and also on the Smaulgld website. You'll get email updates. You can see the charts a lot better on the Smaulgld site. And also consider becoming a Smaulgld patron. I think I have 12 patrons. We need to boost that up a bit. And also, please consider donating via Litecoin, Bitcoin, and PayPal. Thank you very much for listening.